It's Way Up with Angela Yee, and it is a Wealth Wednesday, and I'm here with my Wealth Wednesday partner, Stacey Tisdale.
Happy Way Up. We are going to take you super high today.
Yeah, I mean, this is way up. And Jasmine Brand is here with me. This is the definition of way up. And we have Julia Haart with us.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here.
We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Super excited to have
Really
you.
nice.
Julia and I have been friends, and I'm just watching what she's been going through and just always come out of it creating something new. Reminds me of somebody else I know.
Well, thank you,
Serial
Stacey.
building things, but we're really excited to have you here.
Thank you. And I'm so grateful for our friendship, honestly. Like, I knew we would be friends like the second we met,
Well, I love it. And we've been watching you on My Unorthodox Life, 2 seasons so far. 3rd season confirmed?
I'm not allowed to legally say.
So yes, okay.
No, don't say that. Oh my God.
We're going to break news right here. We're breaking news.
No comment. 0 comments.
I actually started watching My Unorthodox Life before I met you.
Oh, wow.
And I had no idea how you showed how restrictive
Oh, yeah.
that is. And so many people I know living in New York don't understand that lifestyle, particularly what it is for women.
Yeah.
So how did you get from there to all of the career amazing things that you've done and to ultimately being an advocate for women entrepreneurs? How did what happened to you affect that?
Well, I think, the reality is that we really don't know what we're capable of. And especially as women, I think we've been told so frequently every day of our lives that we're not capable, that we shouldn't push, that we shouldn't demand, that we shouldn't want equality, that when I left my community, I left at 42. I didn't know a single person in the outside world. And it literally was the outside world. There was my world and the outside world. And I still think about them that way because my world was in the 1800s. The outside world was in the 21st century. I'd never been on a date. I'd never been to a bar. I didn't know that there was such a thing as getting roofied. Like, I knew literally zero.
You couldn't wear pants, right?
I wasn't allowed to wear pants. I wasn't allowed to educate myself. I lived in a very ultra-religious Jewish community. And I know that, recently there's been a lot of talk about laws in Iran, that women can't be educated and that they can't sing in public, they can't dance in public, they need permission to get married, they don't live alone. That was my world. When I see these laws there, I'm like, that's Muncie, New York. The only difference is nobody beats us or kills us or poisons us or throws us in jail. But those are the only people you know.
Right.
The conformity, they punish you through your children because if you don't conform, your children won't get proper matches or marriages, and therefore their lives will be miserable. And so you're forced to conform if you love your children.
What was the turning point for you? Because we watch on the show, right? And we see even your oldest daughter and your youngest son, they're still very much connected, I think more than you, to that upbringing.
So interestingly enough, Batsheva today is a bacon-eating, crab-loving child.
Oh, wow. Yeah, her daughter really.
Yes.
Her daughter really stepped out. Yeah.
My daughter is full-on 21st century.
Wow.
Okay.
She does not allow anyone to limit her or to make her feel that they have control over what she puts on her body or what she puts in her mouth or who she loves or how she loves or when she loves.
And that's an interesting transformation to see because it is hard when you've been raised a certain way to feel like this is not the right thing.
Oh, it's you have to understand, most people who leave my community commit suicide or go on drugs because we're not equipped to handle the 21st century. The reality is, I lived in the 1800s. Whenever people say, explain your world to me, I say, think Bridgerton, minus the fancy balls and the gorgeous dresses, but where women were married off, they were uneducated, they were told that their minds were inferior to men, they were not allowed to live alone, and if they were impure or misbehaved in any way, end of story. Everything dependent on the match. That was the only thing a woman could, hope to achieve is a really good match. And that's the world I grew up in. And I actually want to show you something really funny. When I first started talking about it and saying hey, this is what's going on in my world, I was told I'm exaggerating and that the education in my community is amazing and all of the above. Someone sent me a letter from 2020. So this is, God, I'm going to age myself now, but I graduated in 1989. So we're talking over 30 years ago. And can I read an excerpt from it? Because it tells you everything you need to know. So it says as follows. Dear parents, in the last year, it's becoming increasingly prevalent for high school girls to be preparing themselves and working towards a college degree. This is not the reason Klal Yisrael has established Beis Yaakov schools for Bnos Yisrael, meaning the Jewish people established these Beis Yaakovs, the school that I went to, not in order to actually educate their daughters. The reason was a direct connection to Torah. It was to become the sole source of their learning and connection to life, to have them connected to any college in any form, which is an independent source, or should we say an outside source, during those years that were set aside for them to draw life from Torah, from the Bible, is not to their benefit, is detrimental, and, love this next word, antithetical to Beis Yaakov schooling. And it goes on, and it says, the fact that the college courses may be Chumash, Halacha, etc., these are not colleges like you're thinking. These are not Stanford and Columbia as they're talking about. These are colleges and universities that are still fully religious, still completely separate. Men and women don't learn together. They're still learning the same subjects. But since they're technically colleges, they're forbidden. So, and then it says, for all purposes, once your daughter has connected herself to college, she has disconnected herself from her Torah learning, which is her only source in life. If your daughter is presently preparing for or taking any college courses, please make an appointment to discuss this with us. And then at the very end, I don't know if you can see it here, you have two little things where you check. Check one is, my daughter is not taking any college courses. Check two is, my daughter is taking college courses or preparatory tests. I would like to set up an appointment.
Oh, my goodness.
That's great. What gave you the courage to lead that life?
My daughter, Miriam. That's the reason I'm alive today is because of my daughter, Miriam.
So what happened? What did she do specifically?
My daughter, Miriam, was a tiny little rebel, literally from the day she was born. You have to understand, I grew up in a world where women are covered head to toe from about by the time they're 3 years old. And my daughter was a born nudist. I could not keep clothes on this girl's body for love or money. My son's friends would come over and she'd be walking around in a little 4-year-old body without any clothes. It was something I could do. I would put clothes on, she would take them off. That was it. And she just always walked by her own path. And then she was in 2nd grade and, you go into PTAs, right? And they had on the wall, like all these little, the assignment was, if you could walk in someone's shoes, whose shoes would you walk in? And then, as parents, we come in and we look at the little wall of everybody, and everyone basically wrote the same thing. My sainted grandmother who had 17 children and never cried. My sainted mother who had 24 children. And, I have friends who had 16 children. I have friends who have 12 children. We counted recently, unless there's a new one that I don't know about, I have 49 nieces and nephews.
My goodness.
Oh, my God.
Okay. And you have 4 children yourself.
I
That
do.
feels like
I was pregnant 10 times.
4 feels like a lot.
I was pregnant 10 times. I could actually have had 10 children. I just miscarried 6 times.
Wow.
I would go to the hospital and I'd miscarry. And, usually miscarriage is a very painful, traumatic, difficult thing. For me, it was relief because I didn't want to have 10 children.
Right.
I didn't want to be pregnant every 5 minutes.
But you went from that life to leaving, you're saying largely inspired by your daughter.
So Miriam, anyway, on this wall, I'm going to go real fast. Miriam, so everyone else was like, my sainted grandmother, my little daughter says, why would I want to walk in anyone else's shoes? My father's are too big. My mother's are too high. I think I'll go through life walking in my own shoes.
I love it.
2nd grade.
I love it.
And then when she got a little older, when I was in my mid-30s, she wanted to play soccer. She's very sporty. She's won Spartan race twice for women, not just her age group, but all women in San Francisco. She plays basketball and she swims and rides and all this stuff. She wanted to play soccer. And my husband told her, you can't. Now we're talking about I don't remember if she was 5 or 7, a child. And he said, you can't because you're wearing a skirt and because you can't wear pants.
Right.
You're wearing a skirt, and if your knees show while you're playing, a man walking by the field may see your knees and get turned on, and then it's gonna be your fault because you're responsible for men's actions. And so that's why you can't play soccer. Now, let's not talk about the fact what kind of man gets turned on by a 5-year-old's knees or an 8-year-old's knees or an 11-year-old's knees.
Total women's responsibility.
Yeah. And my little daughter, and she was under 10, She looks at my husband, her father, and says, "Oh, well, is he responsible for my sins?" And I was like, yeah, what she said.
I'm going to do that.
Because she gave me permission to question. Because until then, my whole life, I felt this dichotomy between who I was and who I was told I had to be. But everyone around me was happy. Everyone around me followed those rules. So to me, it was like, what's wrong with me that I'm not okay with being silent and subservient and being told that I can't. Not only wasn't I allowed to read secular literature, I wasn't even allowed to read religious literature because my mind was too light. Women were not capable of understanding and comprehending deep esoteric subjects. In the Talmud, which is where most of the laws that govern our lives exist, it says that a man who educates his daughter is teaching her prostitution.
Oh, my goodness.
How do you get from that to and all of the self-esteem and all the stuff that came with it till you left that and you started your own shoe line?
Because I figured if I can time travel, I can pretty much do anything. That's what it was. It was when I left, it was such an insane thing. Nobody leaves. People don't leave, especially women. Because generally when you leave, your children stay. And you have no relationship with them. And I wasn't leaving without my kids. It just wasn't going to happen. So people just don't leave. And so if it was like going from this world to Mars.
Right.
Like imagine if someone said to you at this age, whatever age you are, guys all look like you're 20, but whatever age it is, imagine if someone said, okay, pack your shit. Excuse my language. Am I allowed to say that on this?
Yeah, it's fine.
Pack your shit. You're going on a spaceship to Mars and you're going to have to figure it out by yourself. By yourself. You're the only person on the spaceship. That's what it feels like.
This is a unique situation because your ex-husband, he does still, like you still are able to go back and see your youngest son.
My husband left the community. Mm-hmm. He's no longer a black hatter. He's still religious. He still keeps, kosher and Shabbos. But he married a woman who does not cover her hair, who has a college degree.
That you're friends with.
And I love her. I think she's amazing. So I managed to even get my ex-husband out of that world. And, when we first got engaged, he proposed to me in a parking lot. And his proposal after, I think we'd known each other for like 10 hours. And he said, will you be my Eshes Chayil, which means will you be my women of valor? And a woman of valor is someone who plows and cleans and does all the things so her husband can be great, right? We're the stepping stone for someone else's greatness. His second proposal was in Puerto Rico with his girlfriend.
Oh, wow. What a difference.
Big difference. And they called me from Puerto Rico and said, Julia, thank you.
Aww. Julia, let me ask you this. When that happened, when you first got proposed to, were you horrified? Like, what was that? Or were you like, this is what I'm supposed to do, so thank goodness this happened for me?
I went on a hunger strike. Didn't work, but I tried. Because I'd already said no to 2 guys, which is like, that's not a good thing. And so my mother literally said, if he's not an axe murderer, you're marrying him.
Why'd you say no to the first 2 guys?
Well, the first guy I said no to, because I found him terribly unattractive, to be honest.
Fair.
And he was like an absent-minded professor. He drove at exactly 30 miles, and I've never seen anything like it. He just annoyed me after one day, and I couldn't imagine being married.
What about the second guy?
And the second one, this is really embarrassing. The second one was because I didn't think he was religious enough. I wanted to...
The nerve of you.
Can you imagine how ridiculous I was? What nixed it is that he told me he went to baseball games. And I was like, what?
You were horrified.
That's so funny.
What? He's what kind of person wastes time on baseball when he should be learning Torah? I need to sacrifice my life for Torah. That's literally how I was taught.
Okay.
So
that's
he wasn't
when you were
religious
very
enough.
young.
Oh, yeah, I was a teenager.
Your daughter changed everything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was a kid.
She was like your inner voice,
She was my inner voice because I wanted so bad. You have to understand, most people want to be good. We don't wake up in the morning and think, how can I do evil today?
Yeah.
Right? We want to be good. We want God to love us. I wanted to be loved by God. I wanted to do what I thought he told me to do. I just couldn't keep it up because it was so antithetical to who I am as a human being.
That took so much. What I'm trying to get at is how did you educate yourself to become a businesswoman?
I read. I became a voracious reader. I read everything from Euripides to Voltaire to Spinoza to Descartes. You name it, I've read it. I have 2 kids, one who graduated just graduated Columbia and Miriam, who graduated Stanford University. And I would have them send me their reading lists every quarter. They have still not sent me a book I hadn't already read.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Literally. That's
We
how
might
I
have
educated
some for you.
myself.
About business. as well.
Business, history, marketing, fashion, everything I could get my hands on.
But you were always into fashion, and the first thing you did was start the Julia Hart
yeah.
shoes.
I mean, I've been drawing my first love of fashion when I was 3 years old because, I was traded for Greene. My family and I were traded for Greene. We came out of Russia. America got my parents and me. Russia got Greene because there was a grain embargo at the time. And they took us to several internment camps before we got here. So I spent a bunch of months in Vienna, Austria, and then a bunch of months in the Vatican. And there, this little boy, he was like 5 to my 3, and he used to do all these odd chores, and he took all that money and he bought me my first Italian handbag.
Oh my goodness.
And that was it. I fell in love with fashion.
So that was it.
That was
No
it.
turning back.
No turning back. And then I started drawing and designing. I couldn't help myself. I thought fashion is the personal expression of who we are today. To me, it's freedom.
I watch your show really to see what you have on too, and not just you, but like your whole family to
It's
see
amazing.
the luggage, to see the shoe closet.
I've been in her closet.
to see the bags, to see everybody on the show has got that sense of fashion.
We love it because it's self-expression. You have to understand, I grew up in a world where I wasn't supposed to wear colors. I got called into the rabbi's office all the time because I was too noticeable because I was wearing pink and yellow and red. And he would say to me, Julia, you're too noticeable. Stop with the colors. And I would say, the day that God's world is all gray and black, you can convince me that God doesn't like colors. I look out my
colors
window
exist for-
and that's right. God made color. I'm putting it on my body.
Do you feel like people, and I noticed this, right? You're an entrepreneur and you've really built yourself up. Like you said, you moved out when you were in your 40s and you had a lot to learn. But I feel like people try to downplay it. Like there's no way she was able to do that. It's not possible to build this hundreds of millions of dollars empire without
years,
something else
yeah.
happening.
Yes.
And they also try to act like it's not you that did it with your own grit. How does that make you feel? And do you think that's because you're a woman?
I think 1,000% it's because I'm a woman. When season 1 came out, I was accused of marrying my husband for his money. And even though when I married him, he had lost all his money, all he had left was EWG and a few $1 million. I kept my mouth shut because I loved him. And I allowed myself to be accused of marrying someone for their money to get a leg up because out of pure love. But, my first brand, which was Julia Hart Shoes, I have texts from there. Because I did get propositioned by people who invested in my company.
Wow.
And I told them, this company is about freedom. And if I have to sleep with someone or fake an emotion to have it, then there's no point in it. I have never once, ever done anything that wasn't authentic and true to who I am. And I think the reason I constantly get accused of this is because what I did is unusual. And it is very fast. And it is hard to believe. And I think that there are many people in the world who, they hear my story and one of two things happen. Most people hear my story and start their own careers or leave difficult spouses or leave communities that have held them down. I've had women from all over the world, from Ethiopia and Rwanda and New Zealand, I mean, you name it, women who have told me that they chose not to commit suicide after they watched my show, who've started their businesses. I was at a fashion event once and this woman came over to me and she bursts out crying. And she's like, you don't know what you did for me. And she pulls down her dress and there are cigarette burns in over her entire back. And she said, the day I finished watching your show, I picked up my stuff and I walked out the door. So I've had women from all over the world send me messages of how what I've done helped them. Then there are people who look at what I've done and they feel like, well, I should have done more. And they feel guilty. And they feel like, well, if she did this, what excuse do I have? And so they don't want me to succeed because my success kind of says you can. And that's difficult for people to hear.
But your record speaks for itself. When you got to Elite World Group, it was one thing.
I mean,
you changed it into something completely different that's completely about empowering women.
Exactly.
Tell us that journey.
So, when I took over EWG, it was a modeling agency.
The number one modeling agency.
It was an amazing modeling agency. But, my husband had tried to sell it because, again, he had lost his money, and he couldn't even get $70 million for it. When I took it over, I realized that it shouldn't be a modeling agency at all. To me, think about it. What is media? Heart Media. What's media? Media is whoever has the audience. That's media. So it's not the Vogue magazines anymore or the television shows or the billboards. Who is the media now? People like you and talent.
Right.
Talent is the media. Nowadays, when someone wants to see what Kendall Jenner is wearing, they don't go on Vogue. They go on her Instagram page. And when you think about that, then they're the new media. Now, what does that do? It does three things. It completely shifts the power dynamic, because it used to be that they would stand in line and they could only be famous if a creative director liked them, if a casting agent or a magazine editor, they had to beg and stand and say, please choose me, and be
there's
abused.
only a limited amount of space.
And there's just, that's it. You're too fat, you're too tall, you're too thin, you're too this, you're too that. Nowadays, it's the creative directors and the magazine editors chasing them because they're the ones with the audience. So once I recognize that, I'm like, we can actually put the power in the hands of our talent if we treat them like brands and networks. And so I brought in-house everything that you could possibly need for that, so that we started to create and curate their content. And then we realized, oh, wow, we're sitting on billions of people's data. We can actually choose the person. I wanted to make advertising honest. So the people who advertise things in my company are people who actually use the product, believe in the product, because we were able to see from who they were and what they did, what product would be commensurate with what person. And that created a massive longevity in their career, because when they were finished the runway or the tennis court or the football stadium or whatever it was, they were brands. They could create product. So they could still be making money in their 50s and 70s. Yeah. And then the next thing that I did, first thing was longevity. Then the next thing I did was eternity, because in 2019, I also started Metaverse and avatars. People thought I was crazy. We were going through a public process before.
This is pre-Meta.
This is way pre. This is 2.5 years before, 2 years before Meta. And I started building the most hyper-realistic avatars in the world. Ours are unbelievable. You could literally see the pores on their face.
Did Miriam have anything to do with this too?
Not yet. But we hired people from all over the world, from as far as Thailand to Egypt. I had a group of Egyptians who were brilliant avatars creators, and we developed this system to create avatars that walk, talk, move, jump, laugh, sound like the person they represent. And I mean, so hyper realistic. If you look at like Decentraland or any of those things, they look like Lego characters. Right. Mine look like humans. The products look like the products. You could almost feel the leather or the soft silk. And so we started creating avatars of our talent, because think about this. They could be sleeping in bed and their avatars could be walking 17 runways simultaneously in 70 different countries. When they're 70.
I need one for the show.
Seriously, everyone's going to get one. No joke. I'm working on a plan right now with Heartsphere, but I need to wait until the divorce is finalized. But I'm working on this plan where basically we've brought down the cost of making avatars so low that it'll be something that every person owns, because you can talk to your avatar. And your avatar starts talking like you.
Wow.
And thinking like you.
Oh, it scares me.
Can
What
you
if your
imagine
avatar goes out and cheats? Does that mean, are you
The beauty of it is that you control it, honey. This is all you.
It doesn't mean it was my avatar.
He is wild.
But imagine if you could leave, like, you know how people write books for their children? Imagine if instead of reading a book about, I don't know, think Audrey Hepburn or, Mother Teresa or one of these people, Mother Teresa's avatar could talk to you and tell you about her entire life, and you would hear it from her.
That's amazing.
That's eternity. And that's what we're creating. We built a system where you could literally, these avatars will live forever. And, let's just pick a singer. I'm not saying that we made it of this singer. I don't know. Pick one, Sia or any singer. Imagine her avatar could be making music 200 years from now. Imagine if she's not only leaving the songs that she wrote in her lifetime, but her avatar will have her ability, her voice, her creativity. Think about that.
Who benefits from it financially, though?
Of course they do. It's
Yeah.
their avatar.
Yeah, your
I mean,
family, that's generational.
That's it. It's generational.
And that's like a documentary too, because I think about like Teddy Pendergrass. They did a documentary about him, but they were able to do a lot because he had recorded himself.
Exactly.
Talking.
Prince also.
Yeah. And so things like that are important to be able to tell your own story.
That's right.
Beyond while you're on this planet.
Yeah. And think about if you spend around 6-7 months with your avatar and you constantly feed it more and more and more and more information, the avatar will know all your stories. They'll be able to answer questions. Your great-great-great-grandchildren will be able to speak to you. That's what we're working on now.
This is a great horror movie. I'm thinking of something.
No, I think it's the most beautiful thing. We're not there yet. Just to be clear, we're not there yet. Where we are today is that the avatar can talk like you, walk like you, move like you. Where we're going is that they're going to start thinking like you. That's where we're going.
This is branding on steroids.
That's my point. My point is that whatever work you do, and you used to think about it, a model or a sports person, how many years do they play football?
Right.
How many years can they walk a runway? What happens after?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what happens after. They're going to be making money for the next 100 years, and their families will be making money for the next 100 years. When they're 70, their 25-year-old avatars could still be walking runways.
That's amazing.
Talk about something that you touched on, because a lot of our audience is entrepreneurs, and you really were touching on something amazing about the power of social media and the power of understanding the new audience.
Oh, yes. So here's the thing that I think people are not cognizant of completely, and that is social media has a lot of problems, right? I get attacked all the time because it's easy to attack someone when you don't know them, right? There's this anonymity that allows you to say the most vicious, horrible things that you would never say to a person face to face.
Yeah, been there,
Yeah, we all have. Oh my God, you can't imagine the things I've been called. Sheesh. But it has something of insanely tremendous value, and that is it's democratized creativity.
How so?
Okay, think about it. If you wanted to be a singer, you'd have to get a record label. Now you go on TikTok.
Yeah.
You don't need to be anyone. You don't need to have anything. You could be from, I don't know, the mountains in Kentucky. You have talent. You now have
You don't need a budget.
forum.
Right.
You don't need a budget. You don't need
a
an
team.
agent. You don't need a team. You don't need connections.
You just need a phone and talent.
You need passion, desire, hunger, ambition, and hard work. It has democratized all creativity, whether it comes from fashion. So many of the new up-and-coming fashion designers were discovered on social media.
Right.
And for the talent, they're not begging a magazine or some dude with a camera to make them famous. The power is now in their hands. They talk directly to the audience.
And especially during the pandemic, I think we really saw a lot of people being able to monetize thanks to that. What was that like for you during that time period?
So it was really, obviously COVID was terrible. I actually had a really, really bad case of COVID. I didn't do so well. I was like an OG COVID. I got it in April 2020. Not so fun. But what it enabled us to do, because I built these divisions prior to that, most people in the industry lost over 70% of their business during COVID. Everything was closed. Nobody was advertising. And many companies basically fired over 100 people. A lot of talent management companies fired 100, 200 people. We fired maybe 3, 4, and we only lost 33%. And that was because of all of our digital advancements. We did this thing. We did all sorts of really fun, creative things where talent would pose at home or show products at home and do all these things because they'd been trained. They knew how to do it. And so we were doing a lot of digital advertising during COVID. And then, of course, with the avatars, think about that. If I'd gotten to it faster, your virtual avatar doesn't need to travel on an airplane. It doesn't get sick.
Right.
It doesn't need to be in a hotel room. And so, God forbid, I hope we never, ever have another global pandemic. But if we do, I think if we all at that point own avatars, our avatars will be able to communicate with one another. We won't feel so alone. There'll be that virtual connectivity.
And I want to talk about self-care for a second, because for you, putting yourself out there, having a show, but then also having your book, and exposing so much of your life and not being raised in a way where you're on Front Street like you are now. How do you deal with that?
Not well. No, I'm kidding.
Because you're going
not
through a public
easy.
divorce, people
Yeah.
are saying things.
Oh, it's really
and people
horrible.
are watching the show, and people are talking
Yep.
about your whole family. So
Yeah.
what are some things that you do? Because I know it's not easy for a lot of people now. Some people will tell you, well, when you're a celebrity, you sign up for that, but that's not necessarily true. You're trying to do your job, do things, and you're not really wanting to be, out there in that way.
Right. And, I think the part that was the most difficult is that, when I got attacked and accused of stealing and lying and being a seductress and all this stuff, there was zero proof, no documents. It was just one man saying, da 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 da. I had hundreds of documents, stacks of proof. Didn't matter.
The people
because
don't
I
care,
was a
yeah.
woman. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
People just didn't care. And it almost destroyed me. I'm going to be honest. It almost destroyed me because it felt like I was back where I started, where men control me and their word matters more than mine. And I could have all the proof and all the truth, and it just doesn't matter. And it was hard. The first 6 months were really rough, really, really hard. And I'll tell you the truth, the things that got me through were, number one, my family. Mm-hmm. I mean, they sat by me. I'm going to get all emotional. Sorry. They sat by me. They stood next to me. They held me. They literally defended me. I mean, I certainly, thank you. I certainly would not have survived without them. And then the second thing was thanks to a Broadway show and a woman named Ellen Gavin. You know Ellen. When Roe versus Wade got repealed, it was the first time in my life I ever became politically active. I never did anything with politics. I was like, I'm going to make millions of women wealthy. I'm going to build my army of financially independent women. And I'll leave politics to the politicians. Except then the politicians took away rights of women. And I've been in a world where your body isn't your own. Mm-hmm. I'm not going back there. America cannot become Muncie. That just cannot happen. So I became extremely politically active. And I met this incredible woman, Ellen Gavin, who herself is a playwright and a storyteller and a massive, massive feminist. And the day that the ruling came down from Delaware that I wasn't 50-50, even though I had literally 82 documents, 42 documents, 50-50 tax returns, PPP loan applications, IRS statements, bank statements, loan, everything said 50-50, but I was the liar. Go figure that one out. When that happened, I really wanted to die. I want to die. I've been through so much. I fought so hard. And here again, a man is taking everything away from me. And Ellen calls me that day, maybe because it hadn't become public yet, and says, hey, I have these 2 tickets to a show called Suffs. And I just got COVID and I can't go. Do you want to go? And I'm thinking to myself, are you crazy? My whole life just fell apart. What do you mean seeing a Broadway show? And I sat there and I said, Julia Haart, you fucking pick yourself up from the floor and you go to this Broadway show, because if you despair, he wins.
Right.
If women despair,
that's the main thing.
Men win. I'm not going to let that happen. So I go to this show, and it was about the suffragette movement. And that show literally changed my life, which is why I know that a story can move mountains and change universes. Because it was about the suffragette movement, and there was this scene that they enact where the women were arrested, imprisoned, put in literally like a dungeon, and force-fed through tubes because they went on a hunger strike. And I'm watching this and thinking to myself, you effing coward. What's happened to you? Okay, there's a few newspaper articles. Boo, boo, boo.
Perspective.
These women went to jail for demanding freedom. These women were tortured for demanding freedom. If they didn't give up the fight, I'm not giving up the fight. And since that day, have there been hard days? Sure. But since that day, my faith has been so immutable, so unshakable. I'm going to win. The truth will come out. And I will never give up. And I will never stop fighting until every woman's voice has equal validity and power to a man.
And this has made you fierce about
Oh, honey,
making
I am
women-
fierce.
I know that, but it's made you really fierce about making women financially independent.
Oh, yes.
Why you
Because-
think that's so important.
Because to me, freedom is not having to ask permission. Mm-hmm. And there is no freedom without financial independence. You know, when I was in La Perla, when I was creative director of La Perla, I would always go into the stores just to see how things were selling. And I will tell you, and I started collecting this, how many times I would go into a store and I would hear a woman say, well, let me ask my husband if I can buy this.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All the time. And I wanted to go over and hug her and hold her and tell her, you don't need his permission. Go make your own money.
I'm
You
a
can
fan of that.
do it.
Yeah.
The minute you have to ask permission, you're not free. So to me, the quintessence of freedom is financial freedom. Because without financial freedom, you have no say, no voice. He who holds the wallet makes the rules.
What kind of advice can you give to women that are in situations where they're not financially independent right now? What kind of baby steps, small steps can they take to sort of
Get ready.
put them in the right direction?
Love that. Here's the beauty about work. You don't realize what you're capable of until you just get started. So, what I always tell people, I hate zoos. I really will not go into a zoo because I don't like the idea of animals
Being
being
caged,
caged for my viewing pleasure. I just think that's not freedom. But my kids kept nudging and nudging and nudging when they were younger. Let's go to a zoo. So finally I found the San Diego Zoo because they're, not in enclosed spaces. They kind of recreate their habitat. So we go to this one animal that can jump higher than any animal in the animal kingdom. It's some African elk. And the tour guide says, okay, where's the gate? Where's the fence? How are we keeping these animals in? We look around. There's literally nothing. No gate, no fence, no wires, nothing. We give up, and he points us to 4 telephone poles on the corners of the enclosure. And on the very top of these very, very, very tall telephone poles is like a half pipe C. So imagine a pipe cut in half, like a long curved C, connecting these 4 telephone poles. The way that this animal jumps is it goes to the edge of something, it looks up to calculate the distance, and then it jumps. This African elk would go up to the edge of the enclosure, look up, see that half pipe, and think there was a ceiling, and never jumped. They could have walked right through. There was no fence, no gate. It was here. And that's what I feel about women. Mm-hmm. The fence, the ceiling, so much of it is in our minds.
Yeah.
We think we can't, and so we never try. So my advice is, I don't care what you do. Look, what did I do when I first started? I didn't have a college degree. I didn't know anyone from the outside. I sold life insurance. It's the only thing I could think of selling that you didn't need a degree for. Mm-hmm. If you need to want it so badly that you can't breathe without it. You need to want to be free so badly that you are willing to work as many hours as it takes. You are willing to take, when I first started, people would pat me on the head. People literally diminished me every day.
Yeah.
And I just didn't care because in my eyes, I saw that I could accomplish.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, I don't care if you start working at a 7-Eleven. It doesn't matter what you do.
Right.
Just get up and do something. And then figure out, okay, now that I have X amount, what can I do with this amount? Don't spend it on clothing. Don't spend it on anything. Invest it. Figure out, okay, I'm going to invest this to the next step.
Yep.
When you get to the next step, figure out, okay, what do I want the next step to be? But I would say that the first step in that journey, you've got to want it.
And you also have always told me that one thing that you really advise women and people in general about business, spend some time with yourself.
Oh, yes.
A lot of us don't do enough of that. Because when we were even talking about social media and digital, I can just hear people, okay, so I should do this, chasing. But it's really stop.
Exactly. I mean, it's basically what we were talking about, which is you have to know what you want. That's the first step. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what you want, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
You've got to pick something. You have to pick a passion. Mm-hmm. And often with talent, especially because I was dealing with younger women, the first step was, okay, if I want to create your social media into a brand, you've got to give me what you love, what matters to you.
Right. So there's so many people that want to do any and everything.
Yeah, it doesn't
Anything
work.
comes up, I can do that. I'll do that. I'll try this. I saw this work for this person. I'll do that. And you have to know what you're passionate about and then go really hard at it.
Exactly.
Like social media almost ruined that.
Right.
And journalism, because everybody's a journalist.
That's
Everybody's
it. Everybody,
an expert.
that's the
Everybody's
problem.
this, and
Like,
it's not,
you've got to listen to your own voice. Like, there was this one young woman that I was working with, and she wanted to build a brand. She wanted to eventually sell product. And she said, well, what product do I pick? How do I know? And I started talking to her, and we came out with the fact that she's a massive lover of the ocean. She's worked with, over a dozen charities to help, save whales and dolphins and help clean up water. And I was like, this is your love.
Yeah.
forget about the bikini shots. Forget about how sexy you look when you're bending down. Show people what you love. When you go to these charity events, take your audience with you, because one day when you're in your 30s and you're no longer walking a runway, you will make a product like a sunscreen that doesn't pollute the water, and everyone will understand why, because they know you for that. So choose one thing. I always call it your angel. Choose your angel. What do you see when you wake up in the morning? What do you see when you go to sleep at night? Choose your angel and then focus on that, and that's your thing. You have to know what you want or you're never going to get it.
What are your thoughts on marriage now?
Oh, boy.
Because that is a business arrangement, but, you know, you went through it, and we did see you going through it.
Yes.
But what are your thoughts now? Like, moving forward, would you want to get married again? And if you did, what would be the boundaries and the parameters of that? And what type of agreement should we have, you know, in getting married?
I love that. So here's my current philosophy. I'm not saying that I'll feel this way always. I'm just telling you what I feel right now. What I feel right now is I totally understand marriage when people are younger and they want to have a family. I think your kids need to know that you're legally supposed to show up. And I think the spouses need to know that when the baby's vomiting and pooping and crying, that they're not going to be like, bye, right? I think at my age, I would much rather someone be with me because they want to be and they choose to be every day, rather than because they think, oh my God, to break this contract is going to be a giant, pain in the ass. I might as well just stay married. So for me personally, will I do a ceremony? Sure.
Commitment ceremonies are like all the rage.
Ceremony. What I do is, oh really? Is that a thing?
It's huge. And younger generation came up with it. It's like you go through the whole marriage and everything, but without that legal document.
And think about it. There are no other legal contracts that are eternal. Everything has an expiration date.
When you reach a certain
marriage,
age, it comes down to, like, I realized when my father passed away and I went through all of the wills and he had everything in place, I'm like, if he would have remarried, this would have been a disaster.
Think about that.
So it's like irresponsible parent when you're young, when you're younger and whatever. But it's like half of this goes to somebody.
Yeah,
totally. Spouse gets everything,
and that's
people don't understand.
They don't understand that. Okay, do you want to hear my crazy idea?
Yes.
Okay, this is my crazy idea.
I can't wait.
All right. I think marriage licenses should be like driver's licenses.
We just talked about this.
Yeah.
I said,
You did not.
Yeah, we did.
I think it's a great idea. Every 7 years, you've got the 7-year itch. Okay.
Hey, let's reassess.
Let's reassess. And if you don't want to continue, nothing. There's no courts. There's no this. The contract expires.
Yes.
Period.
Right.
And that way, people aren't, also think about this. Historically, people lived into their mid-30s. They got married at like 15. They were dead by 35. They had 20 years. Nowadays, you could get married at 25. You could live till 100. That's 75 years with the same person. Now, let's think about that. Do you think you're the same person at 20 that you are at 40, that you are at 70? No.
The system wasn't designed for this kind of overload.
That's right. The system was not designed for people to live 100 years. Because, 20 years you could get along with many people, right? 70 years? Like, people who get divorced in their 60s, beforehand, it was like, why? Why bother? You're going to die in 5 years, right? What's the point? Nowadays, people get divorced in their 60s, they have another 40 years.
Yeah.
Think about that.
That's
Marriage
true.
was not created to be this 100-year event. It just wasn't. And so we got to change the system because we're living longer.
You're going to change some systems.
I know.
Let's do it.
One, we're definitely going to do a show about this. The divorce, marriage, commitment ceremony. And I did just read in Sweden has the highest divorce rate, but the happiest people rate, because when you get a divorce, there is no financial obligation between former partners. It's just the law, so they can happily move in and out of marriage.
That's it.
Next show. This show, I think it's absolutely amazing that you are also moving into venture capital for female entrepreneurs. And we talked about this all the time.
All the time, women do not get that money.
2% of venture capital goes to women.
And women of color is like 0.35%.
Well, I have something to talk about. I can't talk about it yet, but I do have some exciting news. This is something that, when I couldn't work for EWG, and so I couldn't help make women financially independent that way. I had to think of, what am I going to do this year? I'm not going to just sit around and not help people. That's my purpose in life, right? So we started making these female founder forum meetings in my house where I would bring young female entrepreneurs and then VC financiers, and the entrepreneurs would be able to present. And we got a lot of investment for these women. So it's been working really, really well. And now I have an idea to kind of take it nationwide. Because, as you said, 2% of VC funding goes to women-led businesses, which, by the way, earn 4 times the investment than male-led businesses.
Well, we want to help in any way we can once you're able to talk about it.
It's something I'm really, really excited about. And I think will allow every woman who wants to in America to have an opportunity to start something.
That's incredible.
So I'm really, really excited about that. And then, I've got a few other projects that I'm really
Talk about the body.
Yes, my plus body. So it's something that I invented. You've seen it in season 1, the shapewear.
Yes, it's amazing looking. It's really beautiful, like
it doesn't look like shapewear,
and it doesn't have seams. It's really nice.
I love something with no seams.
That's right. Here's the thing about it. Like, okay, now you know that my pop culture knowledge is a little fudgy, right? Because I only left 9 years ago. I missed a few. I missed a few things. So I watched Bridget Jones's Diary. I think it was 2017. I don't know when it actually played, but that's when I got to see it.
I like that movie a lot.
It's a great movie. Renee, right? And then there's that scene where she's trying to decide, does she wear the shapewear and the granny panties? She's going better in her dress, but then she doesn't want to bring the guy home because no one wants to be caught dead in shapewear. And she decides to put it on, and it works, and the guy comes back, and she completely forgets that she has it on.
Yep.
And there's that scene where she's on the floor, and he's undressing her, and he's like, look at these naughty little shoes. Look at this naughty little... Oh, my God, what is this? And then he starts playing with it. I'm like... And I thought to myself, what do women do? And then it's a $8 billion market. So millions of women all over the world are wearing shapewear. But shapewear is incredibly ugly, beige, white, and black. Yeah. And the reason for that is because the minute you put color or pattern, because it's a compression garment, when you stretch something, you get the lines. Yeah. So the lines distort, the pattern distorts, and it looks really ugly, which is why it's always beige, white, and black. Dyeing is historically the only way that we've ever colored clothing. Yours is dyed, mine is dyed. Every person in this room, the color in their clothes has been dyed. Mm-hmm. We have a new way of putting color into clothing. We do not dye our clothes. We heat fuse color into our material. And what this enabled us to do, number one, it is so much better for the planet. Fashion alone accounts for 20% of wastewater in the world. 20%. Dyeing is the second largest cause of wastewater in the world. Second largest cause. We do not dye. We heat fuse. No CO2 emissions, no wastewater. It is so good for the planet, so much better for the planet than dyeing, you cannot imagine. And because we heat fuse it, it doesn't act like dye. It's like Elastigirl. You could stretch it from here to eternity. Mm-hmm. It doesn't budge. The color doesn't move. The pattern doesn't move. So for the first time, you can wear shapewear that's pretty, sucks you in, but it looks like lingerie. No one would ever know.
Is this available now?
It's going to be available starting April.
Okay.
We're relaunching. I mean, I have a website, but we closed it because of all this divorce craziness. I couldn't focus on it. I'm relaunching it in April. And you're going to see, I mean, it's incredible. It looks like lingerie. And we fixed a lot of other things. The problem with shapewear also is that it's thick. Mm-hmm. You're trying to make yourself thinner, but you're adding a very thick compression layer.
God forbid somebody touch you. They're like, whoa.
What is that? Or I know women who can't button their pants when they wear it because that's this extra half an inch makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, we realized if we could fuse color into fabric, maybe we could fuse pieces of fabric together. And so it's thinner than this piece of paper. Oh. It's as thin as a piece of paper.
We cannot wait to try this.
It's unbelievable. And the other thing, excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to use this word. You'll tell me if I'm not. The other problem with shapewear is when it covers up, above your chest, it gives you what's called pancake boobs. Because the whole point of it is to squish you in. Yeah. It also squishes in parts of you that you don't want to squish in. Right. So my shapewear actually is not only sold by clothing size, it's sold by cup size.
Okay, that's great.
I like that. Yeah.
So it actually gives women more of a bust
more
than
curves.
less. It's unbelievable. And it fits you better, and you're not sucked in because you could buy a large 38 double D or a large 38E. It doesn't matter. And we have the widest size range of, I think we go up to, this second season will go up to XXXL. I want every woman to know that she's beautiful and fabulous and that we're not leaving her out of the equation. And then the last part of it, I'm going to say one more thing because it's very, very exciting. The second season of this collection will have swimwear for the first time. You can have shapewear.
We need that.
That's swimwear because you'd never know the difference. It's as thin as swimwear. It dries like swimwear. It doesn't run.
Because some of that swimwear that's like that is so ugly.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be because they don't know. They can't make those colored patterns. This is genuine compression garment wear, except it looks like a bathing suit. So imagine a little boy short and a little tankini. You look as sexy as F, except it's sucking you in every direction. And no one will ever know the difference because it looks exactly like any other swimmer. And then the third season, we're going to do athleisure. You know, compression, a lot of athletes wear compression when they work out. It releases toxins, you sweat more, and you lose more calories. But no one's walking into an Equinox wearing Spanx.
Yeah.
They're just so ugly.
Right.
But you're going to walk into an Equinox wearing plus body because it's going to look as nicer than Lululemon.
And then we can also go to brunch
compression.
after.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because athleisure is my favorite type
I
of
love
clothing.
athleisure.
Living it.
So
I
that's
see the passion in everything that she does.
yeah.
You can
I'm
see
excited because it's all about helping women, right? Like shapewear to me, I want to eradicate the discomfort and embarrassment of wearing shapewear.
FYI, men need shapewear too, and they're getting into that also.
Oh yeah, well I'll work on them less. I'll be honest. There's enough help that goes to men. I'll focus on women, of course. Eventually we can get to men, but right now, and then the other project that I'm working on that I'm really excited about is this brand called Amion. This woman, Alina Merle, she is a cancer survivor. She lost both breasts, and it did terrible things to her skin, and so her doctor recommended cryotherapy. And
It's a quick freeze, quick deep freezing.
like a deep,
yes.
and it did wonders for her skin. And she's an inventor. We're actually partnering on several projects together, but this is the one that's furthest along. Basically, she said, I wonder how women who can't go into a cryotherapy, who can't afford cryotherapy, what can they do at home that will mimic it? So she developed this skincare routine, and it's an ice cube. You keep it in your freezer. And in the morning, you go like this all over your face, and it just melts into your skin. And what it does, because it acts almost like cryotherapy, it enlarges your pores so that the skincare that you put on afterwards goes in deep. And then the minute it dries, it shrinks your pores back in, which enables it to stay in your skin and not dissipate. It's unbelievable. It's an extraordinary thing. Yeah, look at my skin.
I know. I'm like, look at your skin.
I've been using it since I've met her. So, I mean, I'm like totally obsessed with this
you
product.
should share.
Yeah.
I'm going to share. You know what? I'll actually send you guys. If you give me all of your, I'll bring 3 boxes because you're going to see it's unbelievable.
I can't wait. I will try that every day.
It's amazing. And it feels kind of like a mini spa treatment. Like I'll do it in the morning and I'll close my eyes and I'll do this and I feel like relaxed and it's like almost like a meditative thing. It's really, really, it feels amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And one final question
Yes,
from me for you that will help the men and women in our audience. If you had one money lesson that you've learned from all that you've been through that you think our audience could learn from, what is it?
Don't trust anyone, even if they're your spouse or your best friend. Put it in a contract. I didn't take enough care about contracts. I trusted instead of putting it in writing. And I think, we're made to feel bad if we don't trust our loved ones. I'm sorry. Trust is great. Put it on a piece of paper. Put it on a piece of paper. That is my biggest advice because imagine if you work and you build something and you create something of tremendous value and you weren't careful with your paperwork, someone will come and take it from you. And the more you succeed, when you start building $1 billion business, someone's going to come for you. So put everything in writing. Make sure you have the best lawyer you can possibly afford. Get it in a legal document. That is the best piece of advice I can give anybody.
There you have it.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for that and for being so open and transparent all the time.
Thank you. I don't know how else to say. So, that's freedom too.
Yeah.
Being yourself is freedom too.
Yes.
And you'll make any seasonal announcements to my Unorthodox Life right here?
Again, cannot say anything about my unorthodox life.
Yeah, she can't say anything, but we feel good about it. But honestly, thank you so much for joining us, Julia Haart. Make sure you get the book, Brazen. Make sure you watch My Unorthodox Life, seasons 1 and 2, maybe 3 coming soon. We don't know. Nothing confirmed.
Thank you for the pearls on this very special Wealth Wednesday.
You guys
Thank
are
so much.
so amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm going to make sure, and I'll send you guys a shapewear piece and the cryotherapy thing.
We're going to look good, have nice skin. We got venture capital money.
Get your contracts right. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna get that venture capital money right. And we're also going to make sure you guys can look at your marriage vows every 7 years.
Commitment ceremony.
So
Commitment ceremony.
To me, that's the most, anyway. Thank you guys so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.